Okay, so let's get started then. Let's log on. Good. Okay, so we just ended with talking about epistemology, and what do we know about epistemology? Yeah, so we have history. I was asking you, we have this kind of I don't know what to call it, continuum, I guess, or scale, to say that, of knowledge. Maybe it's the most absolute kind of form. And then over here you have ignorance. You guys, this is the opposite, I think. But it's not like one or the other. It's not just knowledge / ignorance. There's a lot of area here in between. What would be some things that would come between knowledge that are not quite knowledge, but maybe closer to knowledge, but maybe closer to ignorance? But what would be some other things we call this in between these two things? Anybody? You understand what I'm asking? Like, there's knowledge, like knowing something absolutely, and then you're just completely ignorant about that topic. And then what's in between? Educated. Okay, all right. I thought you were going to say educated guess. But okay, if you're talking about it, maybe you are guessing. Educated, I don't know. I'm just kind of writing these down. I don't know where they fit exactly. Anyone else? Something in between the two.
Knowledgeable.
What would that mean exactly? But you know a little bit about it.
You know
something about it.
But you aren't.
Okay. All right. Knowledge. I think that keeps the E in that word, doesn't it?
Probably.
It's funny how believable doesn't. Yes.
Understanding.
Okay, so you have a certain understanding of it, and I'm not writing these in any certain spot here, closer to one or the other. What else?
In there.
Okay, so maybe a little bit closer over here. I wish I could remember the word. Mr. Mark and I were talking about it last semester. There's a word about, it defines this, that you know just enough to talk about something to the point that you sound like you know what you're talking about. But if anyone would like to push you any further, any deeper with questions, you couldn't go any further. Like you come off as sounding like an authority. But if anyone who had a more probing question, or someone who knew more about it than you did asked you a question, like you couldn't go a step deeper with the conversation. And then you'd kind of be revealed as being, a poser. Yeah, right. A pretender. Oh, man. Do you think faith fits in here somewhere? Faith, is that I have faith that's going to happen. Belief? We'll say belief. Here's another one too. I think it falls between the two. Opinion. A lot of people everyone's got an opinion. Whether it's, the truth or not, or whether they don't have any idea what they're talking about. I guess that depends on the person and the topic, but opinion. Something that's kind of gray, right? I mean, opinions abound and very few people maybe know the truth. And very few people admit that they're ignorant about things. It's not true. Okay, yeah, so there's a lot of gray area in between the two things. We say one or the other, but maybe a lot of times we're operating in this area. We're not completely knowledgeable about topics we bring up. We're not, certainly, maybe I doubt that we're, absolute in our knowledge about things that happen here. There may be a few things, maybe things within mathematics and within science tend to be absolute, but even those things might be open to, scientific things might be open to being changed, and it turns out it's not true. I would imagine, I don't know how this works with a math teacher, but for a math teacher, there's an answer they're looking for, right? There's an answer to this equation, to this problem, and And if you either have the answer or you don't. Now, they might want to see how you arrived at the answer, like what your method was to get there, right? With the words, show your work, turn in your scratch paper, I don't know. But the answer, though, if it's 2, if the answer is 2, well, it's either 2 or not, man. It's you're either right or wrong, but that's not so true. Like in other disciplines, things can be a bit more vague, perhaps. So good. Yeah, I think that we operate kind of in the middle a lot of the time, but some of the time maybe we do know, and sometimes we are completely ignorant. Maybe we even admit that. Okay, so I want to just throw that up before we move on here. So some of the other questions that come up under this field are questions about what are your sources for knowledge? So whoever I asked the other day about, I think it was Lydia actually, was here. I said, are there any trout in Missouri? And if you don't know, how would you find out? And she said, I would just search it online. Well, online is a source. There are lots of sources online. And I think I asked her, like, would you go to like some bait stand website? Would that be, because I really need to know for sure if they're trout. So would that be, what's your source for it? Well, maybe that guy does know. Yeah, maybe, okay, you sell bait. Maybe you do know what's kind of fish you have. I just kind of top of my head asked that. But if you maybe you can come to a more authoritative source than the guy who owns a bait stand. Maybe the state of Missouri has their own website, .gov website with pictures and everything. Maybe there's a book they publish every few years about the wildlife in Missouri. Maybe there's a textbook about it. Maybe you could look on maybe there are other reputable sources where you could look and find out the, what do you call that? What do you call that one? Like, not with fish so much, with antelope or cougars or wolves. Their range, right? The fish have a range. Yeah, they're just kind of in the pool, right? They're just kind of in the stream. I guess they don't travel to the locks at the Panama Canal so much. Not trout from Missouri. All right. So what are your sources for knowledge? So when you guys start writing your senior thesis here, in a few months, we're going to ask you to tell us what your sources are. And it's completely normal and happens frequently that we'll tell a student, that's not really a good source. That's not really a reputable source, and not really a reliable source. And we have rules. You'll get a guideline sheet. They'll tell you what kind of sources you can use, what kind of sources we want you to use. And yeah, there's lots of sources that are solid and good, and there's lots that are not. So what are your sources? This is kind of the way that, this is the way that academia really builds upon itself and furthers knowledge, is by this researcher does all this research over here, and then you take both of these things and you put them together and you take it a little further. But based off of their research and assuming that they have solid sources for how they got to where they are, and you continue to source it properly and with good sources, then knowledge increases in a kind of formal way. Individually, you grow as well by acquiring knowledge. People tell you things all the time, right? Your mom tells you the stove is hot. You assume she's not lying, right? She's a good source. Maybe she's playing a funny trick. Maybe she's taking a psychology class online and she's running an experiment on you. Just see if my son will touch the stove, even when I tell him it's hot. William would. I would. If your mom told me it was hot, I would. No, it's not. That's the source. So we learn things from other people, not just within academia, but even just daily. People tell us things, and we grow from that, or we regress, maybe, depending on who we listen to. Okay. Rounds. Then I put this, I guess, number one, but I just have a few things here. Another thing that comes up under this field is how we attain knowledge. How do we learn things? And really, this may, I thought it was going to blow your mind, but there's really only a couple of ways that we learn things. They're pretty broad ways, but there's really only two ways really that we learn things. If you think of something else other than the two that I give, let me know. I haven't thought of them. But one of these ways is called, technically, it's called empiricism. Empiricism, is that right? I felt like I'm picking my eyes. That's right, empiricism. And the other one's called rationalism. So, empiricism, kind of strictly held, would say that you don't know anything unless you've had a personal sensory experience of this thing, of whatever it is. If you don't have a personal sensory experience of it, then you don't really know. You don't really know. You only know it through experimentation, through experience. You know it through, maybe pain, suffering. You realize, hey, that car really hurts when it hits you going that fast. Yeah, now you know. You've empirically tested it. We can tell you about physics all day long, but tell you to look both ways. Don't cross when it says don't cross. You got to test it out. Empiricism says you have to. It's strictly held. Of course, I don't know that people will totally buy that, but and rationalism is the other side of this, says that we can learn things through language, written, spoken, however it's transmitted. People can tell us things in a book, in a textbook, in a lecture, in a home setting, anywhere, and we can learn things. Hey, I read this in the newspaper or online, and you can learn from them telling you that thing. So language, use of language, this really actually makes us very different than many of the other animals in the world that don't have a developed language. I don't know how they, keep, maybe by example. They watch other things. They watch their parents, how they hunt, or what kind of animals they don't try to take down. You never see a smaller animal like a beaver or something go after an elephant, because they just know, that's not going to work. I mean, a lot of it's instinctual, I guess. But all right, so their parents didn't tell them. The beaver mom or dad didn't tell them, hey, you don't attack any elephants. I know it looks like a lot of food, and might be really good, but and then this has to be experienced personally, not just you, not someone else's experience, but you have to. So back to my favorite example. So if I came here, let's say next Monday, and I tell you guys that I went down to southeastern Oklahoma over the weekend, and I saw Bigfoot down there, and he says hi, and he's very friendly, and had some food. He was hungry, I don't know, and and he went on his way, and he's 9 foot tall to 800 pounds, and hairy and stinky, and all the things you hear about him. And he has big feet, by the way, and he's very human-like, but other than the fact of the hair and the size, he's okay. What are you going to think about me? You're going to say, is that right? I mean, we like you and everything, but why don't we go down there next weekend, Mr. Weaver? Let's go check it out, maybe, Let's go. You have to show me that. I would need, if you ever said before, I think I would need to see that before I believe that. Even to somebody you like or trust, be like, yeah, I probably need to experience that myself. All right, so if Robbie tells me that he's being abducted at night by aliens and they're taking him onto the mothership, and that's why he's so tired, and I'm not saying you're tired, but maybe you start to be tired and I ask you why, and you tell me, well, I'm abducted every night by aliens, they put me to work on the mothership, and I'm doing all these jobs and stuff, and then they dump me off again at 5 in the morning, and I maybe sleep an hour, and then I'm exhausted, man. I'm working all night, like having a night job. Well, I may, what I would probably do, Robbie, if you told me that? I'd probably go down and probably talk to Mrs. Schloss, maybe, or Mrs. Coleman, maybe. I don't know, some of those people down there. Says, hey, Do we still have that deal with Laureate where somebody can go for a few visits maybe and talk to a professional? Right? I mean, seriously, I'd be concerned. Maybe you are being abducted, man. But I think it's more reasonable to think maybe you're having some other issues. Yeah, I wish you maybe get that fixed, right? Or I could say, Robbie, this might sound creepy, but I'm going to sit outside your house tonight. I'm going to stay up all night. And, is tonight, are you on the schedule tonight to work on the mothership? Okay, good. Then I'm going to be outside and I'm going to see the mothership arrive and somehow pull you out the window. And if I see that happening, if I experience it, then I'll believe it. Then we'll go from there. Then I won't tell Mr. Schloss what it is. Yeah. Right? So you can tell me about it. Maybe I think, could you tell me the truth? I have never lied before. And then, but maybe I'd want to see. So some things we want to test ourselves. I've never looked in your chemistry textbooks, so it scares me, but all the letters and numbers. But if you, I'm going to assume that your textbook has some things. Do you have a lab with chemistry, or is it AP chemistry, or you have a lab? Okay, so there's some things from the textbook that direct you towards a lab, I would imagine, or some book that they want. So some things they want you to do for yourself and get a result yourself, right? And then some things they just tell you, right? Like it's in writing in the book. They're not having you test every single thing they tell you, are they? No? Okay. Then I'm asking you, yeah, but since you probably won't believe this because we're just telling you, then here's the experiment, try it yourself and see what happens. No, that would be very cumbersome, right? To have every single thing, you kind of reprove it to yourself. So a textbook, most textbooks, science textbooks, let's say, for example, that have maybe a lab portion to it, do a combination of this. Some things they want you to test for yourself, do the experiment yourself, do the process yourself, and a lot of things they're going to just tell you. And it's information, you need to retain it, memorize it, synthesize it, put it to work on a test or exam. Right, so some people might, learn one way better than the other. We know this from study of education that some kids, some adults learn better doing things hands-on. Yeah, teach me how to do it, like just show me how to do it, and then I'll pick it up as we're going, and some people can learn things from reading it, right? They can just so the other day I was trying to find out how to do something on Photoshop, William, and there were two choices. You could watch the video of the person doing it, but then below was basically the text of the video, step by step, of the process to go through. Yeah, and I'm thinking I actually did a mixture of both. Like I watched the video until I didn't understand, and I go down and read what they. That's weird. They could show me. They were trying to show me, but I can also learn from language. Okay, good. So can you think of any problems that would occur? I've mentioned kind of one already. If you lived strictly by an empirical set of guidelines, that everything's got to be learned from personal experience, what would be a problem that was this, or what was the problem that come up in that area?
Well, everything in society would be, we have to relearn everything in society as it would be attained. Right.
All those things your mom and dad nag you about and tell you, you'd have to learn all that yourself, the hard way, right? Like I said, look both ways across the street. Yeah. That car will hit you and it'll really hurt you, maybe kill you. So everything we start from ground level, right? Everything had to be learned personally. It'd be really I don't see how we would advance at all, Robbie, like how we would move forward, because people would be so busy like getting the basic building blocks, learning them themselves, and then if they survived that long and survived all the dangers that they, like moving forward would be a problem, I think, for anybody. Okay, what else? What else would be a problem? Well, let's look at the other one. What's the problem if you only learn things by what people tell you in writing or lectures or whatever, or telling you personally? What would be a problem there, perhaps?
People might lie to you.
People lie, yes, not Mike, William. They do. At times. No, not everybody, not all the time. Okay, lies, good. What else? Well, maybe lie, maybe opinions, right? That you You assume, okay. What else? You're strictly, whatever people tell you. Will Rogers has a quote. Our own Will Rogers has a quote said, all I know is what I read in the papers. People would ask him, like, how are you so smart? How are you so, all I know is what I read in the paper. Well, that would be rationalism. I think you have a lot of experience too. What else would be a problem with rationalism? People can mislead you. People might have an agenda, and they're going to kind of, push you that way.
Might mishear it.
Say again?
You might like mishear it.
You might mishear it, right? You misunderstand it. Exactly. Yeah, there's all kinds of problems with this. Misread it if it was in writing. Yeah. I've done that before. There's problems with sticking to one side or the other, strictly. But I can imagine, I can imagine the problems are equal on both sides. Would there be some classes that wouldn't exist, like courses in school, high school, college, if we stuck to, I don't know, to stuck to one or the other? Think about that. Like you can you do history class if you're just strictly in the empirical world? You can't have it. You can't learn history if they try to teach it to you if you have a time machine or something. Go back. We're going to go to the French Revolution right now. There we go. Watch your heads. Really, watch your neck is the big thing. Yeah, not so much your head. Right, no, history that's going to be taught by language, right? There's this course, really. We can't go back and use Plato. I wish we could, right? But having been a guest speaker, you can't do that. We're left with having to rely on written sources, lecture material, books. That's how we learn it. There's no other way, really. There's no other way. And on the other end, it'd be a shame if, I guess you could teach chemistry as a lecture course, just strictly, feed people the information and they take notes and memorize them. I guess you could do that. To a certain level you could, but at a certain level you'd have to, get your hands dirty and be a part of it. So I don't know how far you could go with some sciences without making it empirical. Yeah, we relate empiricism and science together, right? There's an empirical method, right, of going about scientific method of coming to conclusions and taking a hypothesis and all that. Okay. All right. So those are the two ways we learn. Have anyone give me any other ways that we might learn? If you do, I'm happy to hear it. Say again.
Natural selection kind of like empiricism.
Well, that's interesting. Tell me how that would work.
I mean, it's like if you don't learn how to do something, you'll die.
Okay. Yeah. That's not mine.
What's happening? Hard scenario. It's kind of hard to kill you.
Right. Okay. If I witness somebody else being hit by a car, I would put that down as a personal experience. Of course, well.
That actually reminds me.
That's good. I think that's a good one. If there's things that happen that's the end, like you're done. Other people witness that happening, then that's an empirical thing, I would say.
The whole attacking the elephant thing. And then the people that decide to try and attack the elephant probably don't know long enough to have kids.
Right. You look at those Darwin Awards online, people doing crazy things, and you think, yeah, I mean, this is not good for the breeding population. Is that person still of age to have children? I don't know. Have they had children already, or is it too late?
I think all the Darwin Award winners are dead. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, that's true.
You have to be dead to win the Darwin.
Then I have to ask, have they already had children? Have they already procreated? Yeah, that's, see what's happening with those folks. Maybe they learned something from their parents' experience. Maybe I want to try that. Someone have their hand up? Yeah?
When you're saying about natural selection, reminded me of something. I don't know if this counts as gaining knowledge rather than it being already instilled, but I know animals and humans have these genetic things they already do that they never experienced before. For example, human babies, even if they've never seen a pool of water before, they'll still hold their breath if Just because it's,
Yeah, would you say that it's something instinctual, maybe?
yeah,
Yeah, we think more instinctual things, maybe more with the other animals kingdom, in the kingdom, but I think there are things that human babies do. Humans do that's instinctual, yeah. Or, and again, it's hard to say with some of these things. With babies, it's easy because they just enter the world and, we don't, okay. By the way, who are these scientists throwing newborn babies in a pool of water? Who had that idea? The same guy had the idea to give hyperactive kids stimulants, probably, right? Let's see what happens. Oh my gosh, it worked. Gold mine. I'm gonna retire on Adderall. That's but but there are those things that are. We think of the animal kingdom, other than us being more like having more instinct, and maybe they do. Maybe because of their lack of language to communicate things, there are maybe that's come through some evolutionary way. But if we, what was I going to say about that? That's good, because there are things, but like, I think people there, and I think it differs with the person, but people have different kind of levels of discernment about situations. Like they hear something or they're in a situation and they have a kind of and this might come from experience, I don't know. They have kind of a sense about it, almost an internal sense that this is not a safe situation. It's not a safe place to be. Something bad's going to happen or is likely to happen. I need to get out of this area, wherever you are, a parking lot or a party or wherever you are, that something bad could happen and you don't want to be a part of it. And then maybe the person's right. I'm not talking about, supernatural things like where you ask to deboard the plane because you think it's going to crash, and then it does. I don't know about. But I mean, just very kind of sensitive things, very kind of almost fine-tuning things where you just feel like, this doesn't feel right. This person following me, I don't think their intentions are good. Something like that, right? We have some kind of spidey senses, the tingling. Nobody says? Yes, sir.
Did you see that video of the plane that was leaking fuel and someone made a comment about it and the flight attendants almost ignored it completely and almost took off?
I did not hear that. They didn't take off though.
They almost did. They closed the door and then they brought it up and then the flight attendants said it's alright and then they went to the captain and the captain saw it and stopped the plane.
Yeah, well, thank goodness. I'm not really looking for stuff like that when I look out the window. Maybe I should. Yeah, well, I don't know. There's experiments, along the same lines. It's psychology experiments where they use a room in a library or something where the people, they're involved and so they're studying, whatever they do, and they begin to pump smoke into the room and see who will. And how long it'll take before somebody reacts to it. And people see the smoke, but don't say anything. They don't leave, they don't panic. They just, they don't appear to at least, they just, they don't want to cause a row. They just want to finally somebody, usually in a room, but it's interesting how long people waited before people react to this kind of thing. So it's the flight attendants looking at it that's normal. Yeah? We drip gas all the time. I don't know. They don't want to cause a problem. That's interesting. Okay. Okay, let's go on then. Let's just go on. What time is it?
47.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about axiology. You ever know what that dealt with? Good. And I want to say it like that, like I did before, value, because it could have to do with monetary value, actually, or how much you value something, how much the world or let's say a piece of art that values a certain piece of art, not monetarily, but maybe it's very important, it's part of the, world culture, or I don't know. And then, of course, it does have a monetary value. So our personal values and all those go together here in this field. So, this term value, in philosophy at least, has its roots in both ideas of personal, what you value personally, kind of morally, what you stand for and revere, and then also where you place value. So that from within, maybe those values be reflected, kind of manifested in what you show you value kind of external to yourself. So if I have very sincere and true kind of Christian values of charity and helping those who need help, and if I had a lot of money, I probably wouldn't be out, at an auction bidding on a Van Gogh painting. That probably wouldn't be part of that's not the way it would manifest itself, right? I would maybe choose to use that money for some other reason. Maybe not, but I think that our internal values are reflected, if they're sincere, are manifested or reflected in a way that show for what's within. And so, again, if it's all sincere, then so you get the idea of the two parts of this here. So some questions that come up here under axiology. One would be, are there any values superior to other values, right? Values superior to others. So, I don't know. One country's values, whatever that means, by the way. One country's values are superior to other countries' values. And, maybe. One religion's values are more important or better than another religion's values. One person's values, one political party's values, whatever it is are superior to another. Okay, so that's a question. And again, it's kind of hard those are very general statements. That's maybe what makes it hard to kind of nail that down. But are certain values superior to others? Be hard to say. Yeah, here's my place there. How do we come to value something? So, if I'll use this as a long example here. If I've been taught and I've been maybe even trained, maybe have a degree in, let's say, art, or in art history, or I don't know if there's a degree, but maybe you took lots of courses in art appreciation, and you've been told who the masters are, who the master painters are, and that you've latched onto that, like you agree with the professors, and that these are the people that we should revere and look up to as people who love art, as opposed to a person who has no idea about art, no idea about artists' names, or who they should like, or who they should hold up as a master, whose name they should, speak with reverence. There's people like that don't have any idea about art whatsoever. This person's learned this somehow. The first person's learned. They've been told and maybe even kind of been cultivated to believe that these are the people you should like. But the guy who doesn't know anything, who comes in kind of as a blank slate about art, let's say that somehow they got Murphy has a work that she did in art class, right? And Mrs. Pitcock, do you take art, by the way?
No.
I thought you did. Can I use the example anyway?
Yeah.
Okay. Who has some connections at Philbrook, our art teacher, she's kind of connected. And there's a big art display coming. Let's say at Murphy, it's called the Masterworks of Europe or something. Masterworks of America, right? I don't know. Well, now let's Masterworks of the world. And she manages to get your painting in that exhibition. So I don't know anything about art at all. And Murphy, I'll say I don't know you. And as I go through, there are what are believed to be by people who know better than I do. I don't know anything. These master painters from the past. And over here you've got a Monet. Let's put next to the Monet a Manet. Let's put a Klimt over here. Do we know Klimt? Gustav Klimt? Let's put Murphy McCormick here. She signs her name like this, Eminem. I just M. Eminem's trademark. You can't. By two different people too. It's weird. And over here you've got a Renoir. Okay. All right. So I don't know Monet from Eminem to. You can't be a rapper with a name like Marshall Mathers. How far are you going to get with that? That's his name, right? You can't. You've got to come up with a cool name. He had no choice. And who names their kid Marshall Mathers living in their projects in Detroit? I mean, you're asking for your kid to do that for that, aren't you? All right, free. So I'm going through the display. I'm just there. Someone forced me to go. I'm looking at Monet, and I'm thinking maybe he might have been farsighted, something was wrong with his eyes, because it's very blurry, kind of hazy looking. He saw the world differently. And Monet, very colorful, but a little too much for me. Klimt, a little too abstract for me. I don't know. Who's this here? You call over the center. Who painted this painting? I really like this painting here. And no one's told me to revere these people. I don't know. I want to know who this is, right? I'm looking it up. They call the supervisor. I really don't know how this Murphy McCormick got in here. She's a high school student around the corner. And we're going to have that removed. No. I like this. I like it. I like it a lot. Better than this Renoir over here. Better than the Monet. Better than Monet. Yeah, so there'd be, if I haven't been told who's the best, and some high school student gets a painting, then I might like the high school student painting. It's a completely kind of pure value judgment. Yes, thank you. There's no one else's opinions have been injected into that. I just come to the conclusion on my own. However, somebody who really was, into art, like the educated person I mentioned, may find this offensive that I like even in painting, that I even would say that it's even on display together with all these people. And they want it removed, maybe, But so as we value things, somebody values certain things that other people don't value. When it comes to this. And this kind of, let me say this last thing here. This thing here I'm talking about would be a part of axiology called aesthetics. Heard this before? Aesthetics? So somebody makes, go ahead.
Would that be a number 3?
Sure. Aesthetics. And aesthetics is when you make a judgment about something, a personal, a value judgment perhaps, on something that's been created. Something that's been created by somebody else probably. So, or not necessarily by somebody else, that's come to be. So some people may drive through the campus here at Pasha and make the aesthetic judgment, most people do, I think, that this is a gorgeous campus and that beautiful buildings and that, they've done a good job kind of keeping the, aesthetic quality of things, and it's aesthetically pleasing. And somebody may think this whole clinker brick thing is just really ugly. All the jagged brick and everything was kind of, I don't know, neo-Roman. What do they call it? I think it's neo-Roman. I was going to call this architecture here. That's kind of a longer name to it. But it's, aesthetically, they may find it. Have you ever, before you've gone to a movie, looked online to see, what other people say or what your friends say or what critics say about a movie?
Mainly just spoilers.
Okay. You see spoiler alert and you keep scrolling. I feel like, no, I want to read it. Okay, well, a lot of times I've seen critics really go after a movie and say it was horrible, and I go see it anyway, and I really like it. Or the other way around. They liked it and I think it's terrible. Or my friends liked it and I didn't, or they hated it and I liked it. I mean, I saw that. I thought it happens all the time. Have you seen that movie? Yeah, I really liked it. I hated it. Okay, well, that's your judgment, That's your aesthetic judgment of that thing. I have experienced lots of times. There was these two guys used to review movies on TV. We were on PBS for a long time, and so they were making money and they went to the regular network, but later, but they would fight with each other, like not physically, but they would really verbally almost be insulting to each other about how they thought about certain films. It's what made the show popular too, was that they really, weren't afraid to argue out loud with each other. And but then, like every few years or so, they would do an episode that came on weekly, an episode where they would say, every few years, these are the movies that we've reconsidered on, and we have a new opinion about it. And they would say, and when I first saw this, I didn't really like it, but then I actually saw it again, and it kind of grew on me, and I saw the depth to it and the beauty, and okay. So these things could be shifting, I guess, also. All right, we'll talk about the rest of this and move on, but we're getting close to the end of this section. Talk about those three things. All right, I'll turn off the camera. Oops. Here. There's one less person today than yesterday. See you later.